Hello all, and thank you for joining us today in our technology webinar series. My name is Ray Zwiebelhofer. I'm the president of World Software Corporation, the makers of Worldox. I know many of you, I'm sure. I'm joined here by Bill and Brian, respectively from Baker+Cadence and BMC. Just wanted to kind of tee this up before the introductions are made. In this new world, we all keep saying this, I know that it's very interesting, and we're all looking for new ways to utilize our time wisely. And we just felt, one, we're not getting out to trade shows, obviously, probably for the next year. We recently heard that ABA Tech Show in March is going virtual also. And that's where, of the 20-some trade shows we do a year, that's where we usually see many of you, and or client lunch and learns and or private visits. So we're going to try to do educational webinars each week for the rest of this year at least. We've started focusing on cloud vendors, and we'll move into more product oriented solutions that works with Worldox and or Worldox educational tips as we move forward. But it was important to me to first show some really awesome vendors that provide cloud hosting services. As many of our clients have that I talked to, I seem to talk to them more on Zoom and Teams and via the phone than I ever did in a pre-COVID world. But they appreciated the fact, many of them that especially are using hosted vendors, that they never missed a beat. That was a word one attorney used for me, which I like, and I'm gonna keep that internal and keep saying it. But they never missed a beat because all their stuff were in the cloud and they can be accessed anywhere. And I think too often, some of our larger competitors will want you to believe that you have to have a cloud app singular in order to be cloud enabled. And we argue, and our clients do too, that there are many apps that the firms use that are just not to the cloud yet, or not in cloud enabled yet. As most of you know, we do have a Worldox Cloud app, Enterprise app, and then of course the professional. But taking professional and hosting it in a data center in a situation such as a BMC Network has, allows you to access your full desktop, your accounting packages, your case management packages, and other things, including Worldox, in a very elegant and easy way to get to, and a very familiar way with all the flexibility you have. And it is a true cloud setup. So we're excited about that. We encourage our customers as they start looking at cloud and offloading their resources on site to seriously first look at the cloud providers such as BMC that has the full robust functionality, and oftentimes it's much more cost affordable than buying a cloud version of every application you have if they're available. So I just wanted to say hi and thank you for joining, and I will let the experts do what they do. So Hella, take it from here.
Thank you, Ray, and for the kickoff of today's webinar. I'm Hella Schwartz-Grossman. I'm the marketing manager at Worldox. Before we get started with the webinar, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded and the links will be emailed to you afterwards. Everyone is muted right now, but if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the GoToWebinar questions pane, and we'll address any questions at the end of the webinar. Today's webinar is part of our new legal technology webinar series, and we'll introduce some of our partners. So join us on Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. First up are our premier cloud hosting provider partners, and today we would like you to meet BMC Networks Inc. Our speakers today are Brian Mauch, CEO of BMC Networks, and he will be joined by Bill Baker, CEO of Baker+Cadence Solutions. Brian Mauch is the founder and CEO of BMC Networks, a Vancouver-based outsourced IT provider that specializes in law firms. Brian obtained both law and commerce degrees from the University of British Columbia and then combined his education with his passion for computers to form BMC Networks in 1997. Brian focuses on strategic planning and advice for BMC clients. Bill Baker is founder and CEO of Baker+Cadence Solutions that specializes in technology solutions for law firms and corporate legal departments, primarily in the Western States and Western Canada. Baker+Cadence Solutions has been a reseller of Worldox for over 20 years and is a member of the Worldox Inner Circle of Worldox Reseller. Bill has the primary responsibility of sales and marketing and customer relations for his company that has installed Worldox in over 300 sites in the US and Canada. Brian and Bill will be speaking today about how to get the most out of your firm's investment in Worldox and how to access Worldox from anywhere. So thank you in advance for the attention you'll be giving this webinar today. And Brian and Bill, I'm handing it over to you now.
Well, thank you, Helen and Ray, for that kind introduction. My name is Brian Mauch. Bill and I will be presenting today. Talk a quick bit about our company here. As Helen mentioned, we've been doing this for 23 years, based in Vancouver, BC. I have a law degree, and that helps us exclusively focus on law firms. We have a 25-person staff. We do all types of IT, from hosting to managed, and consider ourselves an outsourced IT department for law firms. We have over 20 client firms using Worldox, and we have a great working relationship with Bill's company, Baker+Cadence. We're not actually resellers of Worldox software. We focus more on the IT hosting, management, and support side. Bill?
Hi, thank you, Brian. This is Bill Baker, and our company is Baker+Cadence Solutions. We founded 2002 and have been a Worldox reseller for all those years. We're based in Hollister, California, but we have offices in Sacramento and Orange County and Portland and Vancouver. And we specialize in legal software implementation and training, mostly for law firms and corporate legal departments. Proud to be an Inner Circle member of Worldox, and we've installed Worldox in over 300 law firms and corporate legal departments. Brian? Let me talk about Worldox for a second here. It's one of the leading document management software applications available, and it's been in business since 1998, and it's certainly met the market requirements. And the thing that's so nice about Worldox as an application is that it can be installed and accessed in so many different methodologies or different ways. And it gives, I think, a real advantage over a cloud-only software because it has this kind of flexibility. And so you don't have to, if you have Worldox now and you want to go to a cloud solution, you don't have to walk away from your existing investment in the Worldox software. You simply can change the type of license and move it into a cloud situation. So a lot of flexibility using Worldox. Brian?
Yeah, rather than talking today about our particular solutions in a salesy way, we wanted to focus more on an educational approach for our viewers. There are many different ways to approach cloud computing. What cloud is to one person could be very different to the other, and different law firms have different approaches. So I want to talk about the 3 different methods, models of IT, from pure on-premise to full cloud and hybrid, which is everything in between. And in particular, I want to focus on how firms who have Worldox, who've made an investment in Worldox Professional, can continue to use that software in a lot of different ways. As Bill mentioned, we think that flexibility really drives how firms can use Worldox as opposed to a pure web-based software system, which really only gives you one option in terms of where the data is and how you access it. First, I want to talk a bit about on-premise, which is the standard computing model that started 20, 30 years ago. Many law firms still have this method where you've got a collection of servers in a closet down the hall. These firms may have had Worldox for many years. That's not to say they can't access Worldox remotely. We see a lot of different ways of continuing to work through the pandemic, to work from wherever they are using a traditional on-premise environment. You need to graft on some new methods of accessing it, and I'll talk about those now. There are three main methods, which I'll talk about: remote desktop, terminal server, and Worldox Web. Remote desktop has come in many different flavors over the years. Log Me In and Go to My PC are a couple of the initial ones. But I'm going to talk about the standard Microsoft technology called Microsoft's Remote Desktop Protocol. It's included with Microsoft Windows. It's the standard way. In order to remotely control an office computer that has Worldox on it, you must have an on-premise workstation, which many lawyers do, and their staff. So when you are working off of a different computer, and it can be a Windows PC, it can be a Mac PC, you simply install the remote desktop software, which is inexpensive. It's free, it's included, and it's easy to set up. And you remotely control through your internet connection the computer at the office. It's as if your keyboard, monitor, and mouse are suddenly connected to the computer at the office. You have the same icons, everything works the same way. Might be a little slower because you're going through the internet. There might be a few milliseconds of delay, which can be noticeable, but it works, and it's a very consistent experience from wherever you are. Now, we recommend adding on a couple levels of additional security to make this a secure method of connecting to your computer. The first one that we recommend is using Microsoft's Remote Desktop Gateway, which is a secure encrypted protocol that you use to connect to the remote computer. Rather than poking a hole in the firewall or many holes in the firewall for each computer, this is one single secure gateway to get to multiple computers if you have multiple users using this to connect to their on-premise workstation. This requires an additional Windows server, a virtual server set up to manage this, but we found that this really cracks down on the hacking attempts. And as so often with security methods, it's a question of putting a lot of different security methods in place, because the number one method of hacking these days is for hackers trying to poke at the external firewall, try to get in with some sort of remote access. And there is no one single effective silver bullet that you can place to stop hackers. If there was, everyone would do it and there wouldn't be any hacking problems. So our approach is to put multiple layers of security in place, much like the idea of putting many different locks on the door. The thieves will give up and move on to the next door if you've got enough things in place that are all 98, 99% effective. The second method, which we find is probably the single most effective deterrent of external hacking, no matter what type of remote access we're talking about, is two-factor authentication. You may be familiar with this, you may not. If you've got an Apple or Android account, you've probably noticed in recent years that you have to type in a code or get a text or do some sort of thing. It can be set up. A lot of people think, well, this can be really inconvenient. And security and convenience do exist on a spectrum. The most accessible and easy, most convenient to access system will probably have very little security. And the most secure system to get at will probably be very inconvenient. So firms these days are trying to find that balance between security and convenience. And in my experience over the last couple of years, with all the hacking and ransomware that's been going on, firms have realized that they've had to move towards the secure end of the scale. And it is possible to add both two-factor authentication and remote desktop gateway onto a typical remote desktop environment. Another way to access an on-premise version of Worldox is using a terminal server. This is different from the remote desktop protocol in that you're not connecting to your own on-premise workstation. You're connecting to a shared remote access server. Now, this can be used, all remote access users are connecting to a single remote access server, or you can have a mix of remote desktop for those who have on-premise workstations and terminal server for those who, say, have laptops as primary computers and take it with them when they go. So there's no laptop still in the office for them to connect to. They can use a remote access server. A terminal server also works well for firms that have a branch office and they don't have full-time workstations in the main location because they don't ever work there. So a terminal server works in that case as well. And I'll just point out that remote desktop gateway and two-factor authentication can be added to terminal server users as well. Once they connect, they see the same desktop that they always see. And finally, in the last year, Worldox, or it's been out for a little while, but there's a new version out. There is a Worldox Web version, which you can access from any web browser, any device with a browser, whether it's a mobile or a tablet or a full-fledged computer, even a Chromebook. In order to implement Worldox Web and connect it with the on-premise Worldox professional server, you need to configure the firewall to pass traffic back and forth. You also can use the optional two-factor authentication built into Worldox Web. Bill is going to demonstrate Worldox Web in the second half of this webinar. So now if you go all the way to completely in the cloud, again, there's a lot of different ways of doing that. The best description I have for what is cloud, when people talk to me, it's your data on someone else's computer, whether it's Microsoft or Amazon's or your IT hosting provider or your own equipment, held in a co-location facility with racks of servers, and there's a lot of different ways to approach cloud. So I'm going to talk about some of the ways that companies with Worldox can utilize full cloud solutions to access their Worldox. One is desktop as a service, one is public cloud, one is the official Worldox Cloud offering, and finally Worldox Web, which I've already talked about. Desktop as a service, you may know it, also known as hosted desktops. There's a lot of different solutions out there. We have one. Essentially, it's like terminal server, except the firm doesn't own that server. It's not located in their office or in a co-location facility. You are essentially renting server space from the company who's providing it. Again, it has all the benefits. You're fully in the cloud. You don't have any software, but you're still running servers and they're just not yours. So you're probably paying a monthly fee for not only ongoing support, but for the software and the server space and storage. You access the same desktop from any device. These will typically work through from Macs, from PCs, from anything. There's probably a flat fee associated with it, and you can scale up and down the number of users as you go. Very taking essentially the capital costs of investing in server equipment that exists in the on-premise world and moving it into more of an operational cost. You can also utilize the public cloud services like Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services. We've moved some of our clients into we've moved their virtual servers into Azure and AWS. You're essentially building your own. The difference here between hosted desktop is the firms still have control, essentially own the data, and they're holding it on. They have a direct relationship with Microsoft or Amazon. In this case, you have more control over that than the desktop as a service. If you're finding it a bit slow, you can just turn up the dial and pay more for more CPU and RAM, or you can dial it down if you find that it's more than you need and you want to control your costs. You can also have more control on what you install on that software because your options are usually locked down and controlled in a desktop as a service environment, which makes sense because the person who's hosting that is supporting a lot of different companies and they don't want to make a change that would affect more than just your firm. Worldox Cloud, I'll mention, it's the official hosted version of Worldox G4. You can purchase that directly from exclusive resellers. At the back end, it's essentially the same technology as Worldox Enterprise, which we'll talk about in a bit. And finally, Worldox Web, which I've already talked about. You can access it from any device with the browser. Moving on to a hybrid solution, which a lot of firms usually end up at, or at least initially as they start moving components to the cloud. Maybe they first decide, okay, we're going to move our email to the cloud, and we'll do that through Microsoft 365, or we'll move this portion of our system, our accounting software, to a cloud-based version. So there's a lot of different ways that firms can approach a hybrid, and sometimes hybrid is the best of both worlds. Two areas that affect Worldox are Worldox Enterprise and Worldox Web. Worldox Enterprise is an upgrade license, which Bill will talk about on an upcoming slide, which you essentially add on to your existing Worldox Professional environment. Now you can do that in your office with your existing on-premise system, or you can do it with a hosted system that you've got in Azure or on your own equipment in a co-location facility. So this diagram, it's not fancy with graphics, but I think it clearly represents how this works for those who are technically minded. If you think about your existing Worldox professional system, whether it's in your firm's data center or in a hosted cloud data center, that's the Worldox GX4 file server in the middle right there, and that connects to a Worldox indexer. If you have people inside the office represented at the top by the Worldox GX4 professional users, that's how they connect to the system. However, if you have people working remotely that want to continue working with the same Worldox software installed on their local computer, interacting with their local applications, you can also open that up using the Worldox Enterprise system. So that involves putting a Worldox Enterprise server right in the middle of the screen that connects through the firewall to the internet at large and can connect to computers outside of your office or outside of that data center, represented on the left as Worldox Enterprise users. And of course, just the same as with any professional system, you can also access down the bottom left through a web server, the Worldox Web user interface. So what we have here, if we're thinking about a firm that has their own data center, they can have users at the top using the professional version, connecting directly within the office. Over on the left, using the enterprise from outside of the office or at a branch office, wherever they happen to be. And finally, the Worldox Web client using, say, a mobile or a tablet or any browser that they want. Now, obviously, if your firm has put this in a hosted cloud data center like Azure or AWS, you're not going to have anyone working internally like the professional users. So the benefit to them is that they can use the full client installed on their local computer, interacting with the local computers, the local applications like Word and Outlook. So I hope that clarifies sort of how enterprise works. Bill will be demonstrating that and talking about that as well. Bill? Yeah,
there's a lot of benefits to enterprise. we have a number of our clients now looking at moving their Worldox Professional to a hosted cloud, and all they need to do is upgrade their professional license to an enterprise license and install the enterprise server software on a terminal server at the server site. The upgrade for the license is a small fee of $70 per user, and then a different range for the differential prices for the Worldox Enterprise server, but that's can be from $1,500 for up to 20 users to $2,500 for up to 50 users, and over 50 users it goes up to 5,000. So you pay for what you need. And as Brian mentioned, you can have, if you do enterprise on your own server, then you can have some users who are on enterprise who are remote from the office, maybe in a remote office site or traveling. And then others can be on professional, the version that's on the desktop when the users are connected to the internal network. And so you can have servers in the cloud, but the users will still be using their local workstations just as they were if they were using it when the server was not in the cloud. And there's no need to do any retraining or changing of the way people have to use their document management software. So I see that as a real benefit to the enterprise system, the enterprise approach. Brian?
Yeah, so to sum up, we hopefully that was a helpful explanation of all the different ways that you can access Worldox from wherever you are. And we feel that that makes Worldox a very flexible approach and as an alternative to what other web-based systems. Worldox can go above and beyond, and there's a lot of different ways to approach it that fit every firm's approach to IT. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Bill and change presenter, and he's going to do a demonstration of the following. Please bear with me here.
Thank you, Brian. So I'm going to demonstrate from my demonstration laptop Worldox Enterprise, Worldox Web, and Worldox Professional. Again, the professional version is what you would have on an in-house system. Enterprise could be both in-house and totally cloud. And then web, again, accessing your Worldox repository through the browser. So first I'll show you Enterprise. And I'm not going to show you all of the capabilities here, but I'm going to show you how similar everything looks when you use these two different versions. Now, because Enterprise has to connect through the internet and to the Worldox Enterprise server, you do have to start the application and get it connected to the server. But that once you do that for your session, it will remain connected. So you see now I am connected, or almost. I'll be there in a minute. I've already put in my credentials, but each user would have a username and password that the system will remember when you use the Worldox Enterprise, the Worldox Enterprise startup. So you're now looking at my desktop on Worldox Enterprise, and this is very similar to what you would see if you were on Worldox Professional. We have all of the same capabilities and functions. For instance, if I wanted to look at my favorite matters, I could go over here and click on that, and it would load them from the server down to my workstation. Again, that was all over the internet. And so you can see the kind of speed that I'm getting. If I wanted to view a document, I still have my viewing capability here. Not on that one. See what I can find here that would allow us to view. So there I'm looking at a bad Excel file. If I want to do a search, I do the same search as I would on the desktop. Let's say I want to find a purchase agreement. Looking through my Worldox repository, went back to the server, found these documents, loaded them so that I could see them, review them. If I wanted to, I could open this agreement on my local workstation. So I'm starting up my Word, which I didn't have, and now I've got that document loaded. I could add to it if I needed to by adding more text. And I could save it as a version. So I can save this as version 2. So I'm doing the same functionality that I have on the desktop version. Looks virtually the same and the same functionality without having to learn anything different. The only difference is I'm now remote from the office. I'm not going to go through all the other capabilities here in Worldox. That would take too much time, but I just wanted to show you what the enterprise version looks like. So now I'm going to close that, and I'm going to now switch to Worldox Web. So in order to do that, I need to exit my applications. And I'm going to close my enterprise access. And now I'm going to start my Worldox Web application. I've still got something common open here. So now I'm going through the internet to access my Worldox Web. I was already connected, so I didn't have to go through my two-factor identification, which I normally would. But here now you're seeing a different view of Worldox. You notice that it doesn't have the same icons and whatever, but it has the same functionality as what I had before. So if I want to do another search for the same, say, purchase agreements again, I just want to show you the speed at how fast it can recall these documents back from the remote server. On this server, I'm using a Worldox demonstration site, so it's actually a little different than the enterprise server site that I was using. But I was able to find these documents that have purchase agreement or agreement in the text. If I wanted to view the document, you can bring it up in the viewer. Very easily. I can go to my favorite matters here. If I it would be the same favorite matters that you'd have on the server. It's loading all the files under that particular client matter. Again, if I wanted to, I could do a filter here to say I wanted to look at certain documents that might have the word, say, test in it. So the filters will filter what you're looking at in that file list. If I wanted to change the metadata on that document, I could have it here, and it'll show me the metadata. I'll change this to let's make it a brief. So I'm doing the same functions that I would be doing if I was on the desktop. We have an advanced search capability here, so I can look at anything that's in the description of the document. So I want to find something in stock. I can also change my cabinet if I wanted to. So I'm just going to look over my client files cabinet and my forms cabinet. And so I found all these documents that have the word stock in the description of the document. So that's an example of how the remote user can use Worldox Web. It's now called Worldox Web 3, and we're currently on upgrade 1 of Worldox Web 3, and Worldox 3.2 is being developed, and we should have it here maybe in a month or so. So that will give you an idea of what Worldox Web looks like from remote access. I'm going to close that now, and then I'll go in and open up my Worldox Professional, which is here, and that's my desktop version, as if I was connected to the server through a LAN. That's loaded. You'll notice that it looks almost the same. I have a different arrangement of icons. I could switch it to the other view, but I tend to like this. Can still do the same kind of searches that I just did. And of course, I have the viewer here where I can see the document, my favorite files, similar to what I was showing you before. And what's new in Worldox Professional, although it's not generally available yet, we're in beta test mode, but we now have integration with Microsoft Teams. So these icons up here are for Teams integration. And so if I wanted to do that, let me go into my City of Mesa retirement account, and let's say that I'd like to take this document and share it with Microsoft Teams. So I highlight the document. I will have to sign into my Teams account here. So now we're integrating with Teams. It's selected the client matter that I had as a team. I'm going to upload the document from Worldox to my team site. Now, once that document is uploaded and shared, I'll be able to save it with my other team members. If I open up my Microsoft Teams here, we might not see it yet because there's a little time to sync, but when I go here to my City of Mesa Teams, look at my files, here's the document that we just uploaded. So now I could modify that, and if I wanted to, I could then bring it back to Worldox as a version of the document that I shared. So that's the newest capability coming with Worldox Professional. And otherwise, you'll see that the functionality that I have here in Worldox is similar to what I showed you in Enterprise. And so that's the benefit. Once you learn how to use this version of Worldox and you go to the Enterprise version, the functionality is the same. And if you go to Worldox Web, even though the screens look different, the same features and functions are there, and we found that people can adapt to it with very little training. So it's a very flexible capability. So at that point, I'm going to stop here and see if you have any questions that you might want to bring up from the audience.
Well, I think that last new feature, integration with Teams, is going to prove to be very popular. We're seeing a lot of law firms moving to Teams right now.
Yes, we're excited to get it out there and to start showing people because as more firms go to Office 365, Teams is just included, and so it's going to be a great opportunity to integrate that with their Worldox documents.
As Bill mentioned, what we've prepared. Bill, if you want to go to the last slide, we can see if there's any questions.
Yeah.
So I have a question. This is Rebecca from Worldox. I just wondered whether basically since March, how has your business changed, Brian? Have you had like an influx of people who all want to, move everything into your cloud product, or have you had people doing a mixture of things?
Good question. Thanks, Rebecca. I mean, the first thing that changed is we all had to learn how to work from home, but that happened very quickly because we're all computer types and adapted very quickly. For our law firm clients, all the lawyers were already set up with various forms of remote access, so it was an easy switch for them. What kept us very busy in late March and through April was setting remote access up for our staff members. That said, the firms that already had hosted desktop or full cloud environments in Azure, it was seamless for them. We're now seeing some firms making decisions on their office space and deciding whether they're going to go back to the office ever. If a lease is coming up, some of them are deciding to not renew and simply continue working. So that there has been an increased interest in full cloud solutions, particularly with firms that still had on-premise environments, that if they give up their space or significantly downsize it, they won't have that server closet anymore, and at this point they're tired of buying servers anyways.
Indeed. So in terms of getting people spun up at home who hadn't previously been working from home before, I don't know, typically, like, I know we have to make certain concessions because these are crazy times that we're living through right now. But under normal circumstances, would you have any sort of, minimum bandwidth suggestions that you give to people if they're going to be, working from home and using your solution?
Bandwidth is always a challenging thing, and certainly when cloud solutions began coming out and hosted desktops 10-15 years ago, bandwidth was much more of a challenge. These days, with the prevalence of fiber and increasing bandwidth everywhere you go, 4G, now 5G, it is less of an issue. That said, the internet connection is always going to be the limiting factor in terms of the user experience when it comes. So faster is always better, And you do have clients who have sketchy internet connections, perhaps on hotel Wi-Fi or in their home. I think the very best cloud solutions are optimized to work even with low bandwidth. But as I said, faster is always better.
And in these times, Ray mentioned this at the beginning, that everybody's doing Zoom meetings or Teams meetings or all kinds of different online meetings where you're. I think I'm having more face-to-face meetings with people now than I did before all of this started. How do you deal with those technologies with your solution?
Well, we don't have just one solution. It really depends on where the firms are at. Webcams are a challenge for hosted desktop solutions. There are ways around that, but essentially you're dealing with the fact that the webcam is not connected to the actual desktop which you're working in. You can flip back and forth between the local desktop and the hosted desktop. That's not entirely convenient. There are other ways around this. But when firms are in a full hosted solution like Azure or Worldox Enterprise, there are other ways of doing that. But printers, scanners, webcams, these are always going to be challenges when you're in a hybrid environment.
Okay, and in terms of versions of Worldox, do you have any limitations in terms of what version of Worldox a prospective customer might be on?
We don't. Bill?
Yeah, I would say we are trying to get all of our Worldox clients on Worldox GX4. We still have some on Worldox GX3, but we move them to Worldox GX4, which has so many great new features, including Worldox Web at no charge, and the enhanced email capability, and the indexer running as a service. So it's a much more robust and stable version of Worldox, and we've managed to move well over 250 firms over to Worldox GX4, and I think we have about 10 more to go.
Well, that sounds great. We love hearing that people are upgrading to GX4. Tech support especially loves hearing that.
Yes, exactly. I'll say too that with the advent of the shutdown in March, many of our Worldox clients were pleased to know that they could enable Worldox Web and start using it right away from any device, and gave them a lot of capability. And then we've also seen where people are now deciding to move to a cloud version and upgrading their enterprise licenses to, their professional licenses to enterprise, and then moving into either Azure or hosted cloud services.
Yes, we've definitely experienced a large increase in interest in, people who did not have Worldox Web before know that it's free, but they need to upgrade to the latest GX4 in order to use it. So all of a sudden in March, we had lots of people upgrading, lots of people interested in Worldox Web 3, and many interested in Worldox Enterprise as well as Worldox Cloud. So I know that, I expect, Bill, that you've been as busy, if not busier, than we have.
Yes, yeah, but we welcome the busyness. It's been great, and we just so pleased that so many of that the clients are realizing what they can do with Worldox in terms of the different options, rather than have to throw everything off the side and go to an all cloud system and learn an all new system and train everybody. So they're very pleased with with this discovery.
Great. Well, we also had somebody ask whether the PowerPoint could be made available after the presentation.
Oh, yes, we'll be glad to share it.
Okay. I think that sort of covers all the questions. Did you have, Bill or Brian, did you have anything you still wanted to add?
No, I'd just like to thank Worldox and Rebecca and Hella for facilitating this, and thank you for the opportunity to present.
Yes, thank you for giving us the opportunity to show the different deployments of Worldox.
Okay. Brian and Bill, thank you again for doing the webinar with us today. In addition to being able to share the PowerPoint, we are also going to post a recording of the webinar, so anyone who attended today can rewatch it, and anyone who was not able to attend, they can still get a chance to see it. And anyone who attended today, thank you, and we hope you will join us again next week for another presentation in our technology webinar series.
Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.